Sometimes you just gotta stand your ground and throw them hands. Let's talk about it. What's up, people? Welcome back to Black Geek Cool. Today we're talking about episode 8 of Lovecraft Country, Jig-A-Bobo. But before we dive into it, go ahead and hit the 5 stars if you're listening to the audio version of this, or hit the like button if you're listening to the video version on YouTube. And just so you know, we are going to spoil this. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it, come back, and listen to this review of episode 8, Jig-A-Bobo. I always mess that up. But yeah, let's get into it. So, starts off cold opening, Bobo's funeral. Bobo is actually Emmett Till, so this is very emotional to watch this. They do the cinematography for this scene is amazing and heart-wrenching at the same time to see so many people come out. And you know why they're coming out. It's just so sad, especially with us finding out, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, that Emmett Till didn't do what the lady said he did, and that he was just innocent, 100% innocent, and was murdered for no reason at all. I mean, not that murder there's a reason for murder, but you know what I mean. So it was very emotional really start to show. This show really hits you emotionally in many different ways, which is one of the things I really enjoy about the show. So everybody's at the funeral, and we find out it's been a week since Hippolyta left on her guide trip. So she's been gone for a week. We know where she went, but our characters do not. And they're, for one, thinking, why did we bring Dee here? We need to be protecting her. Montrose is hey, this is kind of a rite of passage to, deal with the loss of your friend because of crazy white people. It's, unfortunately, in certain people's history in this country, that is much of a reality on a terrifying factor that they deal with so much. It's sad, just sad. But they're debating that while they're talking about that. Tick is also talking to Lily this isn't the time for. They were about to have an argument because they've been having an argument for the last couple episodes. I don't know. I wasn't really sure what they were arguing about in this moment. But he was look, this ain't the time or the place to talk about this, which was weird. But Tick seems preoccupied as well. While they're all doing that, Dee runs off. So Dee's gone, and now they're looking for Dee. And it fades out, and you see just how many people are there. And it's such a hot day. It's really a great opening scene. It really does. It sets this episode off in a different way. It sets you emotionally differently where you're going to get taken in this episode. It's really crazy. But yeah. So Tick ends up asking Christina for help. So he meets her, talking to her, asking her for help for protection, basically. And she's like, why are you coming to me now? And she's just, thinking it out because she's meticulous about how she does stuff and tries to understand why people does stuff, why other people are doing stuff. And of course, she's been planning this for a while. You could tell she's on top of her stuff. But she comes to realize oh, you're desperate. That's why you're here with me. And he's like, yeah, whatever. But he ends up giving her the key that Hippolyta used for the machine. I don't know if it has an actual name, but he ends up giving her the key for her to explain to him how to cast spells. And she lets me know you have to have everything in line. It has to be not only energy, but the body, and you have to have, is it will, or you gotta really mean it for all those things to align for the spell to go perfectly. And she shows him the protection spell. Then, she's geek because she got what she wanted. But as she's leaving, Tick is like, what is going to happen on the, how do you pronounce it? Automates? I forgot how to pronounce it. But she basically tells him, like, on that day, I'm going to do something no one in the Order has ever been able to do, and I'm going to become immortal. We're going to learn more about that, because we already know that Tick bloodline has something to do with the ability to become immortal. So she's going to be coming back to Tick, which is really interesting. I don't understand why she hasn't been protecting him more, knowing that he is the only... he is essential to her becoming immortal. Why isn't she protecting him more? Like, why hasn't she put a protection spell on him herself just to make sure he's good until everything's ready for her? That's really a little weird plot hole for me that I thought about, but maybe you guys didn't see it that way. But then we get to Dee, and she's walking down the street, dealing with the death of her friend, missing her mom, trying to figure out where her mom is. And Lancaster finds her. And of course, the reason he's talking to her is because of her comic book was at the I still don't know what that word is. I meant to look it up and I forgot. And nobody told me what it was. We know her comic book was there with the dead cop, so they found her comic book and traced it back to her. And he's like, what do you know about magic? She's like, I don't know anything about magic. And yes, that's my comic book, but why are you guys hassling me? And he ends up putting a curse on her in the nastiest way possible, spitting all on people. That is disgusting. It's really weird to watch stuff now. Let me know if you feel this when you're watching shows now and people are touching right now, especially because we're dealing with Corona. Why y'all touching each other? Why y'all so close? Why ain't nobody got no face mask on? I'm sorry. Maybe that's just me. But he curses her, and we're going to find out what the curse is throughout the story, which is crazy and very interesting. I didn't know you could do that to people. At least I've never seen somebody do that to people in this world yet. So it's really interesting and a new way to see magic in this world. But you also see her eventually go to Montrose' house, and he's like, where you been? And we start to see kind of glimpses of what the curse might be. There's this book says Uncle Tom's Cabin, and the character in the book turns into this weird little demon woman, and it is terrifying. Demon girl, demon woman, one or the other. Terrifying, very weird. And she ends up running away from Montrose, and you hear this real creepy music about knock, knock, knocking on my door. Very creepy. Super creepy. Not gonna. This was like, the ghost one is always scary to me because I hate ghosts. I'm terrified of ghosts. I don't know if they're not real or not. Whatever. That's another discussion. But I'm terrified. But the music to this is 100% terrifying. There's no way around it. It's also terrifying, and they did an excellent job with that. But then we find out Leti goes back to the house to see if Dee's there. And one more thing before I get into that. Last week I forgot to talk about something. Hippolyta and Deanna are literally Wonder Woman and her mom. I did not catch that. That's amazing. That is super cool. Let me know if you caught that. I did not realize that at all. Found that out like 3 days after that episode. Blew my mind. But I digress. Leti comes home, and Jaya, I think it's Jaya. Jaya's there, and she meets Jaya. You remember Jaya from episode, I think it's 5, maybe 6. The succubus, aka Coneo. I think it's pronounced. I'm pretty sure that's wrong. The Ninetale. So Jaya, Leti, and Tick talk. Tick's like, why you here? And she explains how her power works. And Letty's sitting there like, oh my God, you had sex with her. And you see Tick trying to cut her off sometimes. Like, hey, that's too much information. You need to be saying all that. It's hilarious. But she's just like, hey, I know you're going to die. I don't know how you're going to die. I don't know when it happens. I don't know if it's today or tomorrow. And he's like, why are you coming here if you ain't got no information? And Leti realizes, like, which we all realize, like, bruh, she loves you. What do you mean why she's here? So that's hilarious. Leti leaves, and Tick is still kind of talking to Jaya, trying to figure out stuff. And then we go to Ruby and Christina have this weird, never before seen weird sex moment where Ruby ends up taking the potion, and we actually finally see the potion as it first interacts with your body and changes you. That was really interesting and cool to see. But then they have relations and but they both have it right at the moment. Well, I think it was just her. She has a moment where she's transforming back. So it's just weird clumps of skin falling off. It was disgusting, but also interesting and weird. And a moment that they really felt they needed to put in there. But they kind of make reasons for it, because Ruby was like, look, it's just this day I didn't want to be a black woman being done by a white man. And then they go into Ruby talking to Christina about how it feels to be black and all this other stuff. And then it was really deep, hit you hard. Me being black, I got it. I understood it fully. But then Christina came back at her, was like, look, you can't be upset for being or doing what you wanted at this moment. That's why you did what you did. That's why you're here. There's nothing wrong with that. And I was like, that is also true. That is 100% true. And like they had this weird, deep moment. But then there was, within that moment, Ruby asked Christina, did she care that Emmett Till got killed? And she was like, no, I don't. Just bluntly. She was like, I don't care about that. I'm just going to be 100% with you. And that was like, it's kind of weird to try to figure out what their relationship is. Like, I'm not 100% sure how Ruby feels about Christina, aka William. And I'm not 100% sure how Christina feels about Ruby. Especially when we find out later Christina pays two guys to beat her up, choke her, shoot her, hang a will on her like Emmett Till so she can go through that experience. And I'm like, why are you doing that unless you have feelings for her and you trying to understand her more? So that gives you a little more insight into Christina, which is crazy. I don't think we're going to get a Christina-focused episode like we've been doing with other characters throughout this. This was kind of Dee's episode, but we still get very needed and wanted information throughout this episode, even though this is all about Dee. But that moment with Christina was really interesting, and I'm really trying to figure out how she feels about Ruby, because that is a lot. There's no reason to do that unless you care about that person. But how do you care about her? Did you just fall in love with her through this process, or what? Are you just looking for companionship and you see that in her and you're trying to bring that out of her? There's so many questions in that. But then we go to Tick and Montrose have a talk, and he's like, hey, did mom know? Did you cheat on mom? He's like, no, I didn't succumb to my desires. I was with your mother. That's who I was with. I always wanted to be your father. That's why I was there. You can hate me, but I'm trying to be who I am. It's a weird conversation because he's still not being who he is, but he's like, I'm still trying to be strong in front of his son. And then it's super weird. It's super weird, but very interesting. But then they end up trying to do the spell, and right before they end up doing the protection spell on Tick, Tick tells him what happened with Hippolyta, that he went into the future, found out he has a son named George, found out his son wrote a book called Lovecraft Country. That's the book he came back with. And he's like, everything in it is pretty much the same. A couple things are changed. People are women are male, something like that. But ultimately, it's pretty much the same story. Montro's like, I have a grandson, and they're trying to figure out what they need to do and who to protect. And that's when we find out Tick knows that Letty's pregnant because he went to the future. And he's like, she hasn't told me. And Mancho's like, why didn't she tell you? He's like, well, she'll tell me when she tells me. That's crazy. They end up doing the spell. And there's this subtle little information comes out when Montrose is reading part of the spell. And he reads it wrong. Or he reads it how he sees it. And Tick looks at it and is like, no, it's said like this. And he goes, how did you not get that way? Like, you read, you're good at reading. He was like, man, I'm dyslexic. And like, another puzzle piece letting us know that you might not be this man's father. And like, Tick didn't think about it, but now that I think he might have thought about it, now that he knows that Montrose is gay and stuff like that, he's questioning, how did you and my mom work out? That question is eventually going to come in there. It's just the way it is. But they do the spell, and it seems like it doesn't work. I'm not going to lie to you, I forgot that they did the spell until a moment comes up, and I'm like, oh God, they did the spell. But we'll get to that in a second. But then we have Dee going to Lancaster after she's been kind of chased around by these demon girls. Creepy song, all that is going on. She was on a train platform, ran into people. Then she was in an alleyway. They were chasing after her. She went to Lancaster's spot, that spot that Ruby was at. And she's like, hey, why'd you put this curse on me? Blah, blah, this. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what she said. But basically, he was like, look, you go get me the orrery and I'll remove the curse. And then she ends up spitting on him, was like, forget you, I ain't doing nothing for you. And he's like, let her go, she's dead anyway. And this is when we see Dee about to go lock herself in George's, I guess it's a garage, I think it is. But she's going to lock herself there and basically fight these demon women. But before we talk about that fight, we have a moment where Leti asks Christina for help. Everybody's asking Christina for help. She asks Christina to protect Tick, put a protection spell on him. And Christina's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And Leti was like, I'll give you the negative pictures I have for the pages of Titus's pages. And Christina's like, okay, I'll put a protection spell, but I'm going to put it on you. So, this further makes you wonder, why won't you protect Tick right now? Because things are getting heated and crazy right now. But why are you trying to protect Leti so much? But then you as we remember, she did the whole thing where she went through the whole death of Emmett Till. So are you protecting Leti for Ruby? So many questions. Oh, this show is so good. But Leti ends up giving her the pages. She puts a protection spell on Leti. Letty's protected now. And now we go back to Dee, about to throw hands with these demon girls. She sets up to where the demon girls have to come through one door. She locks all the door, gets a pipe, and she's ready to go. She has her baseball cap on. She has a pipe in her hand. She's ready to throw hands. At that same time, Lancaster comes to Letty's mansion, or her house, and he's like, hey, we need to search your place. He's there for the orrery. He's trying to find the pages as well. I think he's trying to find, I forget the other dude's name. He stole pages too. He tries to go in, and that the protection spell on there blocks him. And he like, okay, fine, and ends up leaving, and then they start shooting up the place. So Leti's in there with Ruby. Of course, Leti's got the protection spell, so the bullets ain't hurting her. Ruby's down, and then Leti ends up getting up to, I don't know what she was doing at this point. She got up realizing she can't be hurt. I don't know if she's going to try to go take them on. Like, they got other magic, though. Calm down, girl. They got other magic. But right when this is happening, Tick comes around the corner, sees all the gunfire, and he is, of course, he's like, oh my God, they're shooting up my place. My girl's in there. People I care about in there. And he's about to run in there and go save them. Before we get to that, we're going to go back to D fighting the demon. Demon girls come. D holding her own, doing her thing, taking them down. Of course, Montreux comes, and he grabs her because I think he thinks she's going crazy. But if you pay attention, she's literally swinging at stuff, not hurting herself. So when he grabs her, the demon girls kind of scratch her, and she's like, let me go. Let me go. He ends up holding her and stopping her from fighting the demons, and they scratch her, and it looks like he got infected or something, or they got her. I don't know how these demon girls work. But that ends that scene of that. And we go back to Tick in the street while the police are shooting up the mansion house, Leti's house. And then one police officer sees Tick, points his gun at him, says freeze. Tick puts his hand up. And Leti's at the door and sees it and is about to run to him. And then the officer shoots. And we're like, oh, they about to shoot Tick. And that's when vampire dogs come from under the ground, baby. So the protection spell works. Vampire dogs is protecting Tick. And vampire dogs are back. Vampire dogs go crazy on the police. Biting, throwing body parts all over. Massacring them. Just ripping them off. Lancaster gets bit and thrown. And pretty much just murders the police. You see as Tick and Leti try to get back to the house while the murder, cars are getting flipped over. It is crazy awesome. Crazy awesome. And at the end, the vampire dog comes up to Tick, and Tick puts his hand out, and the vampire dog, like a dog, heals to his hand. And that's the end of the episode. And it's like crazy. It was this is we got 2 more episodes before the end. I think there's 10 episodes. 2 more episodes. This episode was crazy good. Vampire dog. Leti's protected. Did I tell? I forgot to tell you. Ruby told Leti that she's with Christina and that she knows magic. And Leti was like, hey, be careful. Christina's using you. She's using you to spy on us. And Ruby was like, you know me better than that. And Leti was like, Christina tried to get me to spy on us. And Ruby was like, look, I'm getting what I want. I want magic from her. I know what I'm doing. Blah, blah, this. So now Leti knows Christina. Leti knows Ruby knows Christina and knows magic, knows how George died, all this stuff. Ruby's like, you shouldn't have been following Tick, doing all this stuff. So that's going to come to a head probably in a couple episodes. We're going to find out about that. Or we only got 2 episodes. So definitely probably in the next episode. But that last fight was awesome. Super good. I am loving this show right now. So excited. But yeah, that's my review of Lovecraft Country episode 8. Jig-A-Bobo. Great episode. Let me know how you feel about the episode. Hit me in the comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio version, hit me up at at Twitter or on Instagram, at Black Geek Cool. I'm so excited. I'm just saying random stuff. Let me know how you felt about this episode, guys. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out, and I'll see you in the next review.